Hi guys, and welcome to today's episode of thinQtalks. Today we're actually discussing a topic that's very, very dear to all of our hearts and all of the hearts of the panelists that we have here today, which is the maker movement and the exciting new wave of innovation that we hope to see in the Indian context in the very near future. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce everybody who's taken the time out to be here today. We have Tanmay Shah. Tanmay is originally from BITS. And now leading and part of the leadership team at Imaginarium, apart from being a Young India Fellow himself. Tanmay has done an incredible job in being able to bridge the innovator and the actual commercialization, rather, of product building and hardware building. Thank you so much for being here today. Next up, we have Rishi Sharma. Rishi is the co-founder of Faclon Labs, and we're very proud to say one of the first companies that came through thinQbate as an incubator as well. Rishi and team have built a smart water solution along with their own hardware, which enables various elements of industry optimization and smart connectivity across different parameters too. Thank you again, Rishi, for being here today. Thank you so much. After Rishi, we have Gaurang Shetty. Gaurang has been one of the leaders in the entire maker movement in the Indian context for a very, very, very long time. Apart from being lead innovation catalyst at Riddl, he's been entirely responsible for Maker Mela and everything that goes on with it in the Indian context with hardware simultaneously too. Apart from being the, if I'm not mistaken, the Mumbai lead for the Facebook Developer Circle simultaneously, and also being named one of the top 50 most inspiring CEOs of 2017. Thank you so much for being here today, Gaurang. And last up, we have Siddharth Naik. Siddharth is a co-founder of Physiz. Physiz is an IoT startup working in indoor farm automation. He's also a graduate of Vidyalankar Institute of Technology and has been part of the maker movement for a very, very long time with a specialization in mechatronics and a lot more. Thank you so much for being here, guys, today. We're very, very excited to have you. And as usual, you have Arjun and me here from thinQbate, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. So we'd like to start off by asking one simple question. What is the maker movement?
I think like everyone in India has this quality in them. Like they try to tinker and make things on their own or fix things on their own, and it's there since ages. Like you must have heard of these words like Lohar, Sonar, Kumbhar. Like these are the ancient, like the original makers from the Indian origin. And somewhere down the line, I think that most of us have lost these skill sets, and we are not aware about these original makers, and we are trying to adopt makers from the West. But then I think this is the kind of makers that we need to look up to, and we need to learn from what skill sets they have, and then involve and mix all the latest technologies with the ancient and the existing practices which we had, and that will actually define India's maker moment. But right now what we have done and what we are doing is we are trying to frame it like today's DIY is tomorrow's made in India. So whatever we do today, like it will be definitely serving the community, the locals around, and maybe it will be a made in India product.
I absolutely agree with you. In fact, you almost word to word mentioned the thoughts on my mind when you asked what is the maker movement, because having had a foot on both sides where I've gotten exposure to going to the maker fairs of the world and seeing grassroots innovation in India, the one key thought that struck me was we're getting enamored by the romanticized notion of a maker, and the fear, while I fully agree with the potential of a maker movement, the fear I have is kids and youngsters today are starting to think of making as an end. That what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a maker. Now there's a lot of danger in having that thought, because there is no career as making. It's an end to solving problems. If we get carried away in the notion of making is everything and parents start thinking my kid needs to be a maker, then we're going to be in an endless loop of not moving ahead but trying to copy the West.
Sure. As in, maker movement is really close to me because I've been working on on IoT solution, and primarily hardware is a key element there. So for me, when I say what is maker for me, it's essentially leveraging the resources, leveraging the knowledge, leveraging the sort of support system that you have to build something that solves some sort of problem. It will not be a big problem, but you need to build something. And for me, I've worked a fair amount of part to understand various challenges, various advantages as well. So for me, when I say the maker movement, as in what it means for me, it's basically empowering the people, especially in India, as in where people have lost the confidence to again take an initiative. See, anything needs to be started. It needs to start before taking to the end, and the movement helps to bring in confidence that there are people backing your efforts. There are people to help you to fill the gaps of knowledge that you have, or to provide you the resources that you are that's not accessible to you. To take that first step, and once you take the first step, then as people say, taking the first step is the most difficult thing. Once we have taken that leap of faith, then things get much more easy, and that's what we have seen.
When you look at the Indian population, right, and you look at more developed countries' populations, and you look at the percentage of people educated to engineers, right, India is perhaps right up there, right, but unfortunately we don't see the, like we keep saying, right, the output that comes at the fag end of process of making, right. Is that changing? Is that changing at all? Are people looking at this as a viable opportunity, and what's sort of causing that?
Again, the ecosystem is really important. Things are improving as in day by day. One of the big challenges that people used to face before is access to, because again, when you say maker movement, there's a lot of hardware element there, and their procurement is a big challenge. And now with globalization, I would say, as in and much more emphasis on building communities, people are getting, as in having enabling an access to these resources, procuring it either from various parts of India or even Taiwan, China, European countries, USA. So I think because of access to resources, things are getting much more easier. And also with a lot of success stories now where indigenous products, companies are building indigenous products which are adding a lot of value, be it in transportation, be it in warehouse management, in IoT. So what I feel is that things are improving much more, and at an institutional level, I think they can add much more light there.
Yeah, so I think I can add on this, but on a different perspective. So I think that, so you don't need all the tools to start making. So if you don't have anything, so for example, you are just a person from a regular engineering college, which is not that in the top 3 in the country, but still you can be a maker and still you can do cool things. You just need to connect with the right people, go to the right like Fab Lab or any maker space around your network or your community, or talk to your friends and get those resources on board, rather than just buying those resources from another country or spending enough money. So I think that is very important. Like, you need to hustle enough to get things done rather than just waiting for things to happen.
So as a young maker, and like you said, as a young, say, student or a young maker and entrepreneur, and you mentioned about how the maker movement is also in many ways being romanticized by what we are imitating from Western territories. How is the ground reality? What is happening with all of this influx of even Make in India? The students that you mentioned and the romanticizing that is happening. Are students actually getting empowered to be part of the maker movement today? What is the reality?
So there's been something I've always said since more than 2 years now, that one key shift needs to happen where makers stop thinking of business as a bad word, and business owners and businesses in general need to start thinking of making and jugaad, for that matter, as a bad word. Now let me explain. What is happening is makers all over the world are emerging from almost a resistance or a rebellion to the establishment, in the sense that we don't want 9-to-5 jobs and we need to go back to hands-on work, in which they're also bringing the perils of becoming an underground movement which resists any kind of association with the set structures and business operations around. Which means that even if a good idea is brewing in a maker space, that community feels that associating with business is a sin. Sustainability is what I relate a business model to, whereas business, capitalism, evils of profiteering are something altogether different. So that's the first bit. And quickly just ending, businesses need to stop looking at the word jugaad as a bad word, because there's a notion of scrappiness or incompleteness which businesses resist. But at the end of the day, the way you read the word jugaad has to be, as you mentioned, making the best of what you have.
Innovation.
Innovation. So
Frugality.
So I wanted to share an example. So we had been interacting with a lot of doctors lately and trying to gather problem statements. So we discovered that a lot of these doctors have so many ideas, but they didn't know like whom to approach. So that was something with a reality check for us. Like, we are here, please approach us.
So that is an interesting point, because then is the maker movement, you could perhaps break it into two parts. One is the ideology behind creating and innovating and actually building, like you said, and the other one is having the resource, the infrastructure, and the ability to actually make that into a reality, right? So where do you think is the biggest deficit today?
Give an example. So there was this lady, Dr. Nomal. She's a dentist. So she met us like a year back, and she was running this dispensary. Like she's a dentist, yeah. So what happened is she had 10 ideas, and she came to us. She met us. She told us, I have these 10 ideas. She opened a book and showed us all her ideas, all her diagrams. We told, okay, so what is the next step? She told, I don't know how to make these ideas. So what we did is we called for applications. We called for students who are willing to explore and make prototypes for these ideas. And we got 10 students on board. But what we realized is these students were not that skilled enough. So they were from their second year and first year of their engineering, and we allotted one person from our team who is the electronics guy. He started mentoring these students and started working on the prototypes. In the next 2 months, we made 2 of our products. Like the first few prototypes were ready, and like 6 months down the line, she already started selling those 10 units. Like the first batch she sold, and right now she's registered a company. She's also trying to do a licensing deal for that product. So within a year, that was a transition, and that was a learning for her, like from idea to product. So I think if she had approached us a year before.
So I'd jump in there and ask a maybe left field question to Siddharth then, right? As someone, he's talking of somebody who's perhaps not got the bandwidth or the ability, the expertise to build product, right? But they have the ideas. As an early stage company, on the flip side of it, how do you approach making? How do you approach innovation then?
See, for me it was always DIY. It was like I had no resources. It's like all the resources I need to make things, I have to make that also. So it's like everything is glue gun, glues and tapes, and so everything is that. And then you go and perfect it slowly, one by one. So first of all, you got no vitamin M also. So that's another case. So we got to arrange for that. That is also coming slowly. So you're saying like that, you go to people. I did that. I went to people who are actually working on them. I said, okay, I agree. I don't know anything. Teach me.
Right.
So they said, okay, we don't have time. We don't have this. So go again and again. I started eating their head a little bit. So they said, okay, we'll teach you bits by bits, and then see how you come up with that ideas and whatever we give. So that's how it went. And then I met Makers Asylum. I came to know, it's been a very nice place. You get 3D printers, everything. So I had a lot of resources coming from Makers Asylum, and then I met a group of people. Then we came up with this Physiz. So there my shift I had to go from a DIY person to make a product guy, and then I looked out and I was the only hardware guy, and I had to make a product. So whatever I was making was running for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and after that it's going haywire or something like that. So then I went on internet, we asked people what to do. So there are a lot of people who are ready to help. In Makers Asylum, it's all about that. You just come there and make friends, they teach you, and that's how your learning curve goes. So that's what happened, and then you get along, you'll keep learning, it still didn't happen that like one shot. I thought, I'll go to college, become Tony Stark and make some flying machine and go to college, but it didn't happen that way. So yeah, almost.
No, so great. So I think we're hearing about DIY, which is do it yourself, and also I think do it with others. And I think critically, what do you all think now is what we need as infrastructure or a push to the maker movement in India that will perhaps see us for the next 2 decades?
I have a point on this. So again, what I personally believe right now is a lack, as in there's a supply pool and there's a big demand there. but there's a huge disconnect between the demand side and the supply side, because the supply is confined to institutions, as in Fab Lab, and also so these really niche places are there. But again, the market is much more diverse. So again, there are use cases in biotechnology, there are use cases in industries, there are use cases in smart cities, infrastructure, all sorts of places. But again, these people are not exposed to these resources. So I won't expect a contractor to have contacts in IIT or some sort of an NIT, and to an extent where he can get access to such resources. So for me, what I believe can be a big push, as you said, is to have some sort of a government sort of intervention or regulation, or some sort of an offering where we can have some sort of a platform where the supply can be met to demand with where regulations can sort of help in terms of quality assurance. So again, when you talk about any product, the reliability, the cost factor, and the capability to supply, there are three major constraints. So again, the supplier should feel confident that if it's on the platform, these are regulated things. Again, we have regulations, we have BIS, FCC, CE. These are actually too, as in they're too complicated in a way, and they're not fit for a startup.
So you actually bring up some very good points actually. So one is of course the need for having a platform which matches the supply-demand deficit or gap. And the second one you mentioned is regulation and government intervention. And I think the question again for all of you is, does that need to be one and the same thing, or
Like there is something like I need that and I want that. So there are two things. So specifically, if I am a private institution or I'm a person existing in Mumbai, I want to do some cool projects and I want to set up a lab. So there can be multiple ways to do it. I cannot wait for the government to start things. So specifically what I need now is a community of people who believe like they all want to make and solve the local problems. So maybe they can crowdsource the entire lab rather than just waiting for the government.
And on the contrary, don't you think that government should perhaps for the maker movement or for the early stage innovation actually stay away from it till something is actually prototype and then perhaps get in?
I think it can evolve. So we don't need to tell the government to stay away. So they can literally see and then set up a panel.
Yeah, I think simplification of policy, right? Where it's more accessible, it's more understandable, it's more relevant. Yeah, I think that.
And it need not be defined right now. It can evolve over a period of time, and it can then see like there can be multiple partners who have already done it, and then there can be people who can then contribute.
One step before that, or maybe along with that, is the requirement for awareness, access, and the platforms to augment. What I mean is, one is just making people aware of what's available. Most of the times the problem is not about creating the most advanced curriculum, training somebody from the grassroots and exposing them to some fancy offices and factories. It's more about they're already aware of their own problems. They're aware of how to solve it right now. If they were given a few more tools, made aware of latest technologies, let them play with it. That's level one, awareness. Access and augmenting is the last step, where if you find a way to source these good ideas and get them plugged into places like thinQbate for that matter, which are created for the purpose of supporting these ideas, then I don't see as of now policy being a big barrier at all.
As the youngest perhaps in the panel today, Siddharth, maybe tell us a little bit about your experience building your first product or the product you're building right now.
Okay, the first product was basically, we had no idea when we got into this thing. We said ki we'll control couple of fans and give plants the air and some 2-3 pumps, and plants will live like that. You know, when we went to a farm, we saw the fan size this big and the pump is like, and I looked at my team and I said, our things won't work here. And they were like, what? But they run perfectly fine. And so then I told them, it's like, it's a different switch. We just need to put switches that, automatically switch them and all that. So we came up with that small idea, which actually first board was like a plywood with couple of components nailed into them. And then with my board like hanging taped on them, and it worked fine, but yeah, it was first step. And then like we evolved. Then I came to know there's something called a body case for a product you should do so that it doesn't short. And there are screws which you can put inside and lock them and seal them. So there's like step by step. This all came through me like from internet and people, you know, whoever I speak to. Shopkeepers are little mean. Yeah, they're like, जाके research करके आओ. And so, no, but I take their points, you know, okay, research करके आता. Even he must be having a bad day or something. So I go home and do my research. I do 2 to 3 days research before going for shopping, because shopping is very mean. Like, you know, for us it's like, so that's the thing, that's the barrier. So after barriers, we came up with a product after all, because we had to take some help from a expert hardware guy.
So when you say research, and when you say that there were some moments where you felt more clueless than otherwise, if you had to revisit those times, and hoping now we're only going upwards and forwards, but if you had to, what would have helped you that would have perhaps made the journey more efficient, more optimized, more streamlined, more enjoyable?
So right now, if I go back again, it will be a crazy time, because I know everything right now, so I could just go to the person and say, this is what I want, this is what I know. He won't be mean to me, he'll be nice to me, he'll give me a bill and everything. So right now, if I go, it's...
So is it knowledge?
Yeah.
So is it just
knowledge, only knowledge.
Not
experience and knowledge.
So I was gonna in fact throw what Tanmay said, right? The three things, right? With access or augment or sorry, I missed it. Awareness, access, and augment, right? And the understanding of which of the three in hindsight could actually have maybe propelled you at perhaps a greater trajectory, perhaps with greater efficiency, and you would say probably awareness at that time. Yes. Yeah, interesting. How would you look at it, Gaurang?
So I think
you work with so many early stage innovators as well.
So I think like most of these innovators in the first go, they think that their idea is the best, and they will get everything at the next day, and then they'll start making a cool product on the same day, and then they'll finish it. But then as soon as they realize that, okay, this is these are so many things which I need to take into account, what we do is like we make them meet some alumni or some existing entrepreneur who will actually impart that knowledge into his brain, and then he will come back to ground zero, and then he'll start making things systematically. He will start planning his day systematically, because one thing which we observed is most of the kids innovators, they don't plan their day, and they don't even realize that they have wasted so much time on making that first prototype, which could have been directly given to a customer and he could have given feedback immediately. They keep making things until and unless they feel that it's good, and then they end up like wasting a lot of days and a lot of time on that one prototype. So that is something which we do right now. Whenever we get an idea, we curate it first. We work with the innovator. We make him meet few alumni innovators who have graduated from our lab to the incubator, and then they give him a reality check. Then they mentor him, give him few contacts. Okay, go and speak to this vendor. He will give you the parts at this cost. So this is like the groundwork which we do.
Whilst you are designing or making a product and you have to create that value proposition, what is it, which one of these three, or perhaps the fourth one, would top the list? Is it the design, is it the cost, or is it the speed to manufacturing?
I think timing is most important.
Exactly, speed.
That's like the right time to make the product and then deploy it at that instant and satisfy the customer.
So I would ask, which of timing in what context? Timing in how long you take from idea to prototype to commercialization, or timing it in the market simultaneously too, right? Because you've seen some product, 2014 में launch होते, they would not have played out the same way that they would have in 16 or 17.
Timing to deploy it in the market is most critical, and timing to make the product again will follow if you know that you have to launch it on that instant. Tomorrow is a deadline.
In fact, the two of you here should most likely echo the sentiment that what's happening also as a result of us being the highest density of engineers in the population is that we become way too technology forwards than consumer backwards, where everything that we're talking about also is right now revolving under open source or DIY, etc. At the end of the day, I think the maker movement's objective, if there was one, is can great solutions go to the largest number of people at an affordable price point. Now, how you get there is through means and channels like Fab Labs, maker spaces, incubators. But if your starting point is because you're excited with, say, 3D printing, and you say, I want to make a product that's 3D printed, whoever in the world cared how a product was made. Right. which is where I think even while talking today, we should give some importance to, especially for the audience who's looking for tips and advice here, make sure that you go consumer backwards no matter what you do. You will find a way to solve that problem, and there will be people to help you out. There are places and knowledge available, internet guru of course, but unless you keep the consumer at the center, it's not going to keep running. You might be satisfied filling your technical bug, but yes, I think you guys as investors should share some experience.
No, I think on that, I think what I was trying to ask is that keeping the consumer in mind, either a consumer has a solution or a consumer does not have a solution. Now, and innovation can happen in both those domains, right? Taking the first, when a consumer has a solution, the question is if we as makers are going to create a new solution, are we making it cheaper or are we making it faster, right? That's the innovation. And for those verticals where there is no innovation, I think that's more open field where there is more creativity to explore. So I think coming back, what I was asking was, which are those pull and pushes that we as makers, creators, entrepreneurs, incubators need to look for in each of these verticals? And perhaps we'll throw it out into, we spoke about the food space as well. So what are you seeing in certain of those industries, certain of those verticals which are, trying to assess both of these markets?
So, like specifically related to food, agri-tech, like, so I have one maker, like recently we had this event Maker Mela, so in that we met many makers from these domains. What we identified is like most of the people who were actually interacting with them, so this is one typical pattern we observed. Like everyone who was just walking by their stall didn't even bother to look, they just walked away because they didn't have a physical prototype. But those who just read their name and they saw the product, and when they spoke to them, they were glued there for almost half an hour. Because that product was so interesting. So for example, that product was agro beads. So there is this girl who has made these like enzyme based beads which can be put into a soil, and the fertility of the soil will increase and it will help the crops grow without fertilizers. So this was the innovation. And when she showed her test results, she showed samples, that the audience there were blown off. And then all of them were like glued to a stall. But then most of the people who didn't know that this existed there, they just passed by and they were glued on these robots and all those things. So this is something which is like again the perspective and how people look at these products. Secondly, like coming back to the food tech, like there are a lot of innovation. There is a lot of innovations happening. I recently saw a cool video on making medu vadas using those like nicely designed nozzles, which you just squeeze the packet and it'll. So I think something like this also is really cool, and it can like cater a large market. So I think the innovations like these can. Definitely.
So if you guys in from your own vantage points of different stages and different parts of industry, if there were three things that each of you perhaps had to say to aspiring makers or people who are currently makers, as hey, you know what, these are your not action points, but these are few things that you should just keep in mind. What would they be? Anyone wants to go first?
Or what not to do?
Yeah, or what not to do. Yeah. So we keep saying that the only thing that we have learned over the last few years is what not to do, right? You never know what to do. Hopefully you don't repeat what you've done and what you don't want to do. Sorry. So yeah, either way, what do you guys suggest?
So one of the things that I just mentioned was, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or maker or a problem solver, make sure that you know what problem you're solving and for whom. And it could be a very personal problem where you don't need to visualize an unseen audience half the world across. You don't need to do that. You could solve it for yourself or for your sibling or parents. That's all right. But know the dimensions and the landscape of the problem. That's one. The other would most definitely be that do not worry about what you don't know, because you'll be surprised at the number of stories and case studies about people who in 4 days have taught themselves or as a team technologies or concepts which require 4 years of education, and I think lots of people will echo that. And after all this, the third and most important thing is never underestimate the value of just speaking up and asking for help or asking a question or a doubt, because the power of, say, a simple heartfelt email or a phone call is, it seems very scary before you do it, so you'll think 100 times, should I call up this person works here or he's a senior or whatever it may be. At the end of the day, you're going to be speaking to a human being, and if you can put a string of few words which are heartfelt across, help is always available. So these are the only 3 comforting thoughts that I'd like to share.
So, I'll talk more as a venture, as in what are the key things as a startup or as any company that I feel are really relevant. 3 major points. So first of all, what we believe, customer is the most important aspect. So you're building something for the customer, not for yourself. So you need to keep him at the center so that you know what he wants, what he doesn't want, or why am I doing it, what is the value addition to him. So for me, understanding the customer, understanding what your product does to the customer, what value it's creating, and what may be the kickbacks. So that's the most important thing as a venture. This is something that we learned with time and after a lot of taking wrong paths. But again, we learn with experience. The second thing that is really important is be prepared. As in, even to understand customer, you need to have some groundwork or some sort of prototype if you're a maker. Because to get a genuine feedback, you need to give him something tangible so that he can gauge that. So you need to engage on a POC level, let him pay something so that he is giving a genuine feedback or something like that. So be prepared, do a groundwork, understand what you want to say, as in have some sort of framework. That really helps you not just to sell or to build something, but also to manage what the path may be or how your team may be. And the third really essential thing as any entrepreneur or any maker as an individual is learning. Always keep on learning. So at times, even when we build things, at times we feel that like we initially mentioned, there are people who think that they build the best. But when you go out there and start exploring, you realize that there's an assortment of solutions out there with talents building really amazing stuff, which you may not build because of lack of resources or just lack of experience, a lot of other things. But the key is always keep on learning, read books, blogs, explore others, projects, be a sort of student. So we are really young, so again, we are already a student. But again, this is what we feel, we need to make sure that we keep this attitude alive. That's really important. So these are the 3 things that as a venture, I feel are really important.
So I think one message for makers can be like, you can work hard, but you should work smart. Like specifically, whenever you take up a project or whenever you try to start something, so you need to use maximum resources from your surroundings. You need to see what are the low-hanging fruits available, network with people, go meet other fellow makers. And apart from that, stop worrying about the future. Like time will eventually come to you and chase you. So don't think kya hoga, kya karna hai. Don't worry about the future and worry yourself. And don't put your parents in pressure. Just keep doing cool things and try to work more effectively, smartly, and equally get your hands dirty. Don't rely too much for the core work on others. That things which you can do, try to do it quickly and then move forward. So I think that's the message.
Right. Yeah, for me, for the message is that don't quit. Just if you want something, it depends, you get it how bad you want it. So if you have thought of something, make sure that it's helping others around you, or else you're just wasting your time making something for yourself and you just keep it in a rack for showpiece or something. That is not what should happen. So make sure that what you're making is worth making, your time, and then do a lot of research. If you fail, learn from it. It's nothing bad to fail. Your kidneys won't fail if you fail something on this. So yeah, so that's the basic point from my side.
Awesome. So I'll augment that with one last thing on what I actually feel in the hardware space is what I believe is the innovator's dilemma, right? And I speak about this to a bunch of people that because hardware sometimes iterations and success metrics are perhaps a little further in the way from what you can actually build. It's easy to lose the confidence. It's easy to lose that belief, right? To chase that big, hairy, audacious goal, right? To be able to think about, nahi, main kar sakta hu, main karunga, main karke dikhaunga, right? It's harder sometimes with hardware, right? And I think that's very important for everybody to understand that it's okay to fail. It's okay to iterate. It's okay to make mistakes as long as you're keeping the customer in your line of sight and you're thinking of the different stakeholders across the organization. Awesome.
So I need to add one example. So what we do is with innovators also, we tell them to categorize their ideas. So there can be various models. This is one model which we follow. So we always tell them, okay, you need to make a product and you have this idea. So put it into these 3 baskets. So one basket is vitamins, one basket is painkiller, one basket is drug. So is that problem a painkiller? So for example, we can take any company. So for example, Instagram. So without Instagram, will you die? So it's like a vitamin. So you are on Instagram because you just feel good, or you just need to show some fancy photos. So it is not solving a big problem. Neither it is a painkiller to you. It is just like a vitamin. So you can just pick any companies and put into these 3 baskets, and then you can categorize all your ideas and filter most of them.
I think great for everybody to actually take context of that, right? If you're in the hardware space and if you're a maker or if you're any kind of innovator, right? Try and bucket your company in one of these 3 brackets, and I think it'll be pretty awesome for you to get a little context on what you guys do. And I think that should wrap it up for today. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here today. And I request everybody to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you guys like this video. Any feedback, please put it in the comment box down. And we look forward to seeing you the next time. Have a nice evening, guys.